Hi, and welcome back to episode 6 of the Leading Adam podcast. Today, we are concluding our series on the human experience, and we're going to dive into shared purpose. So stay tuned.
The Leading Adam podcast is hosted by me, Adam Binkerd. I've spent the last 10 years researching how a healthy human experience is the key to innovation and student retention in education. And now I'm taking to the mic to share what I've learned. Hear how I've defied the odds and transformed from a landscaper to a national expert in student success in less than 10 years. Not an educator? That's okay. Stay tuned for entertaining stories and practical takeaways about leading self, leading leaders, and leading culture. The Leading Adam podcast is co-hosted by Erika Crabtree, produced by Chris Spangle, and sponsored by 240 Solutions. Connect with us at 240solutions.com. And I hope you'll stay tuned because together we can change the world.
Hey, Adam.
Erika.
We're back.
Episode 6.
Episode 6.
You know, I'm really starting to enjoy this process.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Although, you know, we're recording this episode right before lunch. So you know what that means.
Listen for stomach growls? Is that what you're getting at?
There might be stomach growls, but
Okay.
I am thinking about what is next for lunch. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's an important
Well, I
decision
wake
point.
up thinking about what's for lunch.
Yeah.
And then I finish lunch by thinking about what's for dinner. So I think it's common
Sounds
practice.
about right. Yeah, yeah.
I will tell you, I'm loving the fact that it's cooler outside.
Yes.
It's been so pleasant to get through. You know, the Midwest isn't super hot. It's just really humid. We're kind of getting through that.
You hit that patch in July, August.
We had a fire recently at home, just outside, everybody over, just hanging out around
nice.
the fire. And that's
Yeah.
great when the air is cool, the fire's crackling.
Those cool nights are amazing.
Yeah, as long as you get up in time to shower or whatever, because you smell like smoke.
Right.
But that's where we're
important.
at, and I am so ready for hoodie weather.
Man. Yes.
It's like, you know, if you're not from this area, you know, if you live in the Southwest or
Right.
Florida, like, yeah, maybe you wear hoodies, but you don't really understand hoodie weather.
Yeah, yeah. It is a privilege. And yeah, even starting in July, August, my kids are already, you know, man, we can't wait for all the fall things. It really is beautiful in
Yeah.
Indiana with the changing colors and the pumpkin patches and
The
it's
fall
exciting.
flavors.
Oh, the flavors, man. Are
Yeah.
you team apple flavors or are you a pumpkin spice?
Ooh, that's a good question. I could probably go either, but not to, you know, all things back to coffee.
Right, right,
I still want it black.
right.
I'm not on the pumpkin spice train. Like, I'm not that. But as far as the flavors, I think I love like sweet potato casserole,
Oh, that's
which has you can use a pumpkin base
Yeah.
in. I love things like that. But apple cider, it's hard to beat.
Ooh, so good. Homemade applesauce. You go to the orchard, you bring back bags of apples, make some homemade applesauce, and
Yeah.
that smells the house. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife likes to cook that down in the pressure cooker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then we have this process. She'll do it with pears and other fruits as well. But of course, nothing's like a good
That sounds
apple.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, my stomach might growl again. So
right.
now that we're talking about food, so let's move on. Let's talk about the topic of the day, which is shared purpose.
Shared purpose. Yep. It's the final component of the human experience. And we've been talking about that for the last few episodes.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about shared purpose, but
Yeah.
probably revisit the human experience
So
first.
just a quick recap in case anybody's checking in with
Yeah.
us and not having listened to those. So human experience, foundational to all of it,
All of it.
before compensation, before any other initiatives. We got to think about the human experience.
Yeah. And I think the way to put it is it's the sustainable strategy for success because it lasts, right? Next month, next year, 10 years from now, what's still going to be true is that humans are behind profit, productivity, process. All of those things rely on humans. And so the human experience is so critical. And that's why it's important. And so we've talked about 2 of the 3 components.
Belonging, vulnerability.
And today is shared purpose.
Yeah.
So
with shared purpose, how would you define that within an organization? How do we, is it just about the mission, vision, values that get communicated in an organization? Do you think it's more than that? Like, how do you define that?
I think it's one of these components that is so elementary, it feels a little foolish to even talk about it. Because ultimately, how do we define it? It's shared reason for doing or being in an organization or a team. But I think it's so much deeper than that, because mission and vision is a great start, but that's kind of way up here. And it should be a kind of an anchor point, if you will. But it's when there's a healthy shared purpose in an organization, it's evident at all layers of the organization, including volunteers and interns.
Right.
And that's we often write them off, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But so I think we'll get to understanding that more, but it definitely is interwoven in so many other things. And unfortunately, we relegate it to the mission printed on the wall.
Yeah, I think it's easy to simplify when we first started talking about this. Like, every company has a company mission. That's one of the first things you develop, right? You
Business
have a mission.
School 101.
Yeah, you've got the company values posted somewhere in a break room or in a virtual setting, but sometimes that might be where it stops. But I think too of kind of the internal brand of how you want how employees want to show up every day, or how you want them to show up every day, and some of those expectations, and all the way down to those interns in the front line, and everybody should really be operating with that shared sense of purpose. And we've talked about, there's data shows so much of the workforce now is made up of millennials, Gen Z,
right,
and they're looking for meaning and purpose in their work. And I hear it just anecdotally when I talk with students every single day. So many people are leaving professions that they've worked at 20 years or, however long it might be. And they're looking for more meaning.
Right.
So they're looking to switch gears or do something that they feel passionate about, that brings them meaning. And certainly they can find that, within an organization.
Yeah, that reality is more prolific today than it's ever been. You and I are both Gen X, and there's a healthy respect in Gen X for show up, work hard,
right,
keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, and go home. Now, it was much, much more prolific, that attitude in the boomer generation. And it trickles into our generation in a healthy way that has some unhealthy outcomes, I would say, because we were raised by boomers.
Right, right.
But as we start to recognize, we get to the point where we're middle-aged and we're starting to feel like, has my life mattered? Right? That's a very human thing.
Right.
And what's really interesting as you look through the millennial generation and down through Gen Z, and we've got Gen Alpha coming in now, they're asking, how will my life matter? And we weren't asking that question.
Right.
We're looking in retrospect, asking, did it matter?
Right.
Like, did I get lucky enough for my life to matter?
Yeah.
Whereas they're starting from a place of making a difference, having a purpose is important to me.
And I think some of that, hearing you talk about that, so much of work, it was so compartmentalized. So there was work, and that was completely separate from your home life or your domestic life. And now the lines are so blurry. We're working from home. If you have kids and your kids have not crashed a Zoom meeting, are you even working from home?
We've all seen those videos. We've all seen them. That is hilarious.
Right, right.
But yeah, you're right. It's so blurry now.
Yeah.
Because working and living are really in the same space, which makes it hard to turn it off.
It is.
For those of us, Gen X,
yeah,
we just keep going.
Just keep going.
It makes it harder to get started for younger generations because they're looking to matter. They're looking for meaning in their work. So shared purpose is I think elevating in its importance for the human experience as we progress through the generations in the workforce.
Yeah.
And I was looking, I love data.
I know you do.
I love data. Already, right now, today, 49% of the workforce is comprised of millennials and Gen Z.
That's a large
So
percentage.
for those of us leading who are thinking, but it's a small percentage. It's not. We are just one tick away from it being the majority of the workforce, and we need to lead accordingly. To lead in a rigid sense and not address that is foolish, and it makes us look really stubborn, and that's not where we need to be.
Yeah.
We need to engage that process and quit calling it something like laziness. It's not laziness. They want to work with purpose.
Yeah. And that's hard to see if you're a person within an organization. I think specifically about the educational setting where there are a lot of administrative roles. And those roles can be very thankless. Or even if you work in financial aid, you're just cranking and cranking and cranking. And very task oriented, very very process driven. And so you feel like I think it's easy to feel like, how does my role connect with the mission, or how does my role connect with a greater purpose if all I'm doing all day long is loading numbers in a spreadsheet or pulling reports or, those types of things. So where do you feel like the breakdown happens? How can we get better at that as leaders to make sure that person filling out spreadsheets or pulling reports feels just as connected?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I know I'm going to kick this back to you as we go through this conversation to talk about branding and marketing. You have such a bent and a natural affinity for those things. And I think that's going to be important as well. But I think to answer the question is, it begins with awareness and recognizing first that in reality, if your organization is larger than 25 people, you are going to have to start being more intentional about shared purpose. When the organization's smaller, it's more startup size. Everybody's connected to that initial mission and vision.
Right.
They see themselves, I've been a part of this maybe for a little while. But once you go beyond that, and it really, the easy metric is size, like number of people. Once you go past that, you have to be more intentional. And I think in that, it's recognizing your size as an organization, and then recognizing too that mission and vision is often written to be inspirational, aspirational, and a little altruistic. And when you're Sally in financial aid cranking out a process for students to keep them in the flow,
Right.
It's easy to look at that inspirational vision and go, that's good for you.
Right.
It has nothing to do with me. So connecting that, I think, is a matter of challenging the team to connect it themselves and doing it intentionally, not just not sloughing it off going, well, we wrote the mission.
Right.
You figure it out. No.
Yeah.
Invite them into the conversation. How does your role help us fulfill something that is aspirational or altruistic?
Right. Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the awareness. I think so many times those banners get posted, the mission, the values get posted. Maybe they don't really get talked about very often. It becomes just visual noise. So you see that poster in the break room, but you're not really reading it.
You stopped reading it a long time ago.
I couldn't tell you what's on it. Yeah. So I think understanding, do your employees, does the frontline staff and all the leaders, of course, can the organization, members of the organization, do they know the values? Can they articulate them? Do they know what they are?
Yeah.
And so I think as a leader, and that might be, if you're in marketing or you're responsible for making those posters or whatnot, or if you were on the team to develop those, you certainly have an idea of what those are. But maybe not taking for granted that others, you're very close to it. So just making sure that others have that same awareness as you do.
Yeah, I really applaud organizations that simplify mission. Business 101 is your mission should fit on a t-shirt, right? We've all heard it. And if you're an educator, you've probably said it, especially if you're in business school. But I do appreciate that. I think of Dr. Sorrell from Paul Quinn College in Texas. He simplified their mission to eliminate poverty.
Oh.
Like,
Simple.
all right, it's simple.
Yeah.
How are we going to do that? And I think you can oversimplify it, but in his case, he's speaking to a specific demographic saying, this is what we're going to do here. Make no mistake about what we're doing. From the intern to financial aid to the instructor to the person handing them their diploma. That person should be prepared to manage their own finances, to produce and contribute back to society, that community specifically. And he's given them a really easy way and a charismatic way, if you've ever heard Dr. Sorrell speak, to connect every role to that piece. And again, I think he's invited them in.
Yeah.
Not every leader is an orator like Dr. Sorrell. So how do we do that? How do we take that down? And I think so much of that is about internal marketing, which gets overlooked, I think, too many times in an organization. We look at marketing as a sales tactic,
right? When
in reality, our people sell. Everybody sells. Daniel Pink wrote that book, To Sell is Human.
Yeah.
He really unpacks this idea that we all sell. How does that look? And it's when you embody what we're doing, why we're doing it.
Right.
So internal marketing, I think, is important. And that's something that you have more an affinity for. And I'm curious, how do you see the use of internal marketing helping us, especially in education? It has such a powerful purpose.
Yeah.
How do you see that being used, or maybe correctly or incorrectly?
Yeah, I think when I think of internal branding, I mean, and marketing really is so much about communication. And so internal branding, and when you're communicating that to, the employees at all levels, it's really about getting it in front of the organization.
Right.
So that it gets communicated consistently, regularly, and it's easy to access. And then you reward around it. So I think as the organization, goes about developing these things, and first of all, as a leader, really observing and reflecting, does the organization, do our behaviors align with what we want our values to be? And
more than words.
More than words. And especially if they were written, 5 years ago, maybe certain things have changed, or, we went through a pandemic. Sometimes things change.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, at your core, the values are probably pretty consistent unless the business has changed radically. But I think, getting that out in front of people and communicating that, and then being able to build reward systems around that. And whether it's just kudos and congratulations, but if integrity is one of your core values, recognizing that, when you see a staff member behaving in a way, or you hear about something, to make note of that in a very public way, or at least letting that person know, hey, be specific.
Yeah. Yeah. Celebrating the execution of that purpose.
Yeah.
Is important, because then I look at it and say, wow, if I'm also on the front line, I look at that celebration and going, I can contribute too. There's also the other human side of it where we feel left out.
Yeah.
But I think we got to wade through that with the celebrations and really start calling attention to people that are executing well the purpose for which the organization exists.
And frequency matters. So if employees are only being recognized once a year at an annual celebration for for, modeling core values.
Right.
That's not really going to stick.
So what's a better way, do you think? I mean, because when you think of it that way, I envision these, convocations and full staff gatherings that are expensive to bring people together to award them. But it sounds like what you're suggesting is something that can be really more low key, really not that expensive, and maybe done at departmental level. What does it look like? Let's make it simple for those listening.
Yeah, I think even in team meetings, maybe if you have regular one-on-ones, make at the individual level, being able to say, hey, excellence is one of our core values, and here's how you demonstrated that this week. Great job on this specific thing that I saw. Team huddles, another great opportunity to highlight individuals on a regular basis. There could be something more, if it's the organization I work for currently, there's a initiative that's directed by, it comes from HR, but it's a way to recognize staff members, across the team, across departments for certain...
Like nominate.
Yeah, you can nominate them, kind of explain why. Those are important as well. So I think there's different layers. So I think the important of that frequency is not just like a single effort, but I think there's different points and different opportunities that could be taken advantage of to
it's almost
communicate that.
It's almost like you need to inculcate celebration, right? How do I make that a part of our meeting?
Exactly.
I led a team, Erika, once where we started a process with every team meeting, and I made it known from the beginning that every meeting we are going to do what I called "What's Good," and first of all, I had to be consistent in it, and so that they knew we're not moving past this, until we participate in what's good, and it's a simple thing, what's good, and it could be the sun is out. My coffee is hot. Or it could be something a little bit deeper, more like, my mom is in remission from cancer, right? It can be anything that is good. And it turned into something that I hoped for, but wasn't sure would happen.
Yeah.
And ultimately, after about 4.5 months, all the what's good turned into team kudos. And the team began to call out, so-and-so did this week, and I just want to celebrate that. And what they were celebrating was the embodiment of what we were saying was important as a team. That was shared purpose. And then we created also around it a shared language.
Yeah.
Because I only had to say, we'd start the meeting and say, all right, guys, what's good? Everybody knew what that meant.
Yeah.
And I think there was an embodiment, not just for the celebration, but the purpose. What are we doing? The language that we're using, and there's so much. So you take a thing like shared purpose, and you go, simple, right? Shared reason for doing or being. But then you go, wow, how do we really execute that?
Yeah.
How do we get it to a place where I want to walk around with a T-shirt that says "End Poverty"? Right? How do I make our mission so tangible for a group, the purpose for which we do our work, so much that you want to wear that brand around?
Yeah.
And it is all kind of interconnected, right?
Yeah. And what I love about the example that you just gave is that you could not be there and someone could pick that up and say, all right, what's good?
Yeah. And that happens. You take vacation and it still goes without you.
I love that.
I love too. In fact, one quick story on that. We had two team members actually that were on vacation. They submitted via writing their what's good because they were going to miss the team meeting.
Yeah.
Like that's when you realize you have taken something and created value around it and connection to what they're doing.
Yeah.
So how do we challenge leaders? How do we give them, it's our commitment.
Right.
We love having conversations about this.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if the listener doesn't know how to walk out and do something today in their team meeting or tomorrow, whenever that is, then we're really not fulfilling what we decided
That's right.
was our purpose. So what do you think the challenge we can bring today is?
Yeah. So good challenge. We talked about, consistency, frequency. Take those values, the mission, and just communicate until you're tired of hearing yourself. Take 30 days.
Yes.
Communicate those across the organization at the department level. Communicate until you're tired of hearing yourself communicate.
Yeah.
And then the next is the important step is to then have those conversations and ask, how does your role?
And ask.
Yeah, and ask.
And then don't say anything. Ask and shut your mouth because someone will share.
Right.
Your example made me think of a prolific leadership and culture researcher made the comment that the moment you as a leader become exhausted with what you're saying or sharing is the very same moment that your team begins to hear it. That should be an indicator for our listeners.
Yeah.
Share. And when you get to that point where you're starting to get tired of your own voice, ask, how does your work help us do whatever that purpose is?
Right.
And then just listen. Yeah?
Listen.
Just listen. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation as usual. I hope it's beneficial for the group. I'm looking forward to next week's episode. We're not going to spoil that, but I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be big.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us here at the Leading Adam podcast. We hope you found inspiration and hope to see you again next time. Leave us a comment on YouTube, or if you have an idea for a future episode, let us know that too. You can connect with us at 240solutions.com. Thanks, and we hope to see you again next time.